Captain stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, staring at something that should not exist. The showed 12 alien ships hanging in the void of space, each one different from the others. Some were sleek and silver, others looked like they were grown from coral, and one seemed to shift colors as he watched it. His hands gripped the armrest of his command chair so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "Captain, they're hailing us again," said Lieutenant Menu from the communications station. The young officer's voice cracked slightly. Nobody had trained them for this. Humanity's first faster-than-light ship had been in space for only 3 weeks when they appeared. Doctor stepped closer to his chair, her tablet forgotten in her hands. As the ship's lead scientist, she had spent years imagining this moment. First contact with alien life. But in all her scenarios, humanity had been the one to find them, not the other way around. "We should answer," she whispered. Nodded, opened the channel. The changed. Instead of ships, it now showed a chamber filled with strange beings. At the center floated a creature that looked like a jellyfish made of light. Its voice came through the speakers, translated into perfect Korean by technology that humanity couldn't even begin to understand. "Species of Earth," the being said, "I am the council speaker. You have violated the quarantine barrier. This is forbidden. You must cease all space travel immediately and return to your planet's surface." "Quarantine?" stood from his chair. "We didn't know about any quarantine. We just achieved faster-than-light travel 3 weeks ago. This is our first voyage beyond our solar system." The jellyfish creature pulsed with what might have been amusement or annoyance, couldn't tell. "That is why the barrier existed. Your species was isolated for your own protection and ours. You come from a death world, human. Your planet would kill most of us in hours. The gravity alone would crush half the species in this chamber." Behind the speaker could see other aliens watching. One looked almost human but with blue skin. Another had too many limbs. A third was just a floating sphere covered in eyes. They all looked nervous. "We mean no harm," Doctor said, stepping forward. "We're explorers, scientists. We want to learn to share knowledge." "That is not possible." The speaker's voice was final. "Death world species are too dangerous. Your evolution has made you violent, aggressive, and resilient beyond what we consider acceptable for galactic society. You must return to Earth and dismantle your faster-than-light technology. You have 30 of your days to comply." "And if we refuse?" asked, though he already knew he wouldn't like the answer. "Then we will use corrective measures to ensure compliance. This is not negotiable. The Galactic Council has maintained peace for 10,000 years. We will not allow a death world species to threaten that peace." The transmission ended. The bridge fell silent, looked around at his crew. They were the best Earth had to offer, but they were still just 25 humans on one ship, facing an empire of 12 alien civilizations that had been traveling the stars for. "Sir," Menu said quietly, "what do we do?" Sat back down. "We go home and we tell Earth what we found." The journey back to Earth took 5 days. During that time, news of the encounter spread across every human colony, station, and settlement. By the time Horizon's Edge docked at the orbital platform above Earth, the planet below was in chaos. Governments were holding emergency sessions. The United Assembly had called every nation's leader to Geneva. Riots broke out in some cities, celebrations in others. Humanity had finally learned they weren't alone in the universe, and the universe had immediately told them to go back inside and close the door. Ambassador was waiting when a doctor arrived at the assembly building. He was an old man, a career diplomat who had spent 40 years negotiating peace between nations. Now he had to negotiate with beings from other worlds. "They gave us 30 days, said as they walked through the marble halls. "That was 2 weeks ago. We've been trying to contact them to negotiate, but they won't respond. They simply sent coordinates for where we should dismantle our FTL drives and a list of technologies we must abandon." "Will we comply?" Doctor asked. Stopped walking. Through the windows, they could see Earth below, blue and green and beautiful. The assembly is divided. Half want to comply. They say we're not ready for this, that we'll lose a war with civilizations that have had space travel for thousands of years. The other half say we can't let aliens dictate our future, that if we give in now, we'll be prisoners on our own world forever. Had been thinking about this for 2 weeks. What do you think, Ambassador? I think, said slowly, that we need more information. Something about this doesn't feel right. Why quarantine us? Why be so afraid of one new species when they clearly have the power to destroy us if they wanted? As if in answer to his question, Lieutenant Minu came running down the hall. Captain, Ambassador, you need to see this. We just received a transmission. It's encrypted, routed through 17 different relay points. Someone doesn't want it traced. They rushed to the communications center. On the screen was another alien, but this one looked different from the council members they had seen. It had pale skin, large eyes, and its hands shook as it spoke. People of Earth, the alien said in heavily accented but understandable English. My name is not important. My people need your help. The council, it looked over its shoulder nervously. The council is not what it appears. The Empire controls half of it through threats and manipulation. They have been conquering worlds for decades, but they hide behind council bureaucracy. Is next. We have pleaded with the council for protection, but they do nothing. They want you quarantined because they fear you. They fear what a death world species could do if you fought against them. The transmission flickered. Please, I know we have just met. I know my people were part of the council that threatened you, but we had no choice. They hold our colonies hostage. We are desperate. You are our last hope. If you have any compassion, any willingness to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves, please help us. We are sending you our star charts and military intelligence. The fleet will arrive at hour in 42 days, please. The transmission ended. The room was silent. Then Ambassador started laughing, a bitter sound with no humor in it. 2 weeks ago, we were alone in the universe. Now we have to choose between obeying alien overlords or going to war to save aliens we've never met. Doctor was staring at the screen where this desperate face had been. They pleaded for mercy, she said softly. Captain thought about his crew, about the millions of humans who had joined the military not knowing if they would ever face a real war. He thought about all of human history, the wars, the sacrifices, the times people had stood up against impossible odds because it was the right thing to do. Then we respond with warriors, said. We tell the assembly, we let them decide, but I know what my choice is. Ambassador nodded slowly. As do I. Let's go tell Earth that they're about to meet the galaxy properly, not as victims or as prisoners, but as what we've always been, survivors who don't abandon those who ask for help. Outside, the sun was setting over Geneva, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Soon, those same colors would paint the void of space. Humanity's isolation was over. The galaxy had asked them to stay quiet and compliant. Instead, Earth was about to show them what happened when you trapped a predator species and then asked them to watch innocent people die. The age of human warriors in space was about to begin. Commander sat in the cockpit of her fighter, running through the pre-flight checks for the 100th time. The spacecraft was called a Strike Eagle, humanity's first purpose-built combat vehicle designed for space warfare. It was fast, heavily armed, and according to the engineers, barely tested. But that didn't matter anymore. Earth needed every advantage it could get. Eagle 1, this is tower control, the voice crackled in her helmet. You're clear for launch when ready. Copy that, tower. Eagle Squadron launching in 30 seconds. Looked at the formation display. 23 other fighters were positioned behind her, pilots she had trained with for the past 2 weeks. 2 weeks. That was all the time they had to prepare before everything changed. The vote in the United Assembly had been close. 143 nations voted to help 98 voted to comply with the Council's demands. 15 abstained. In the end, humanity had chosen to fight. Ambassador had presented the intelligence to the assembly, and what they found made the decision clearer. The Empire had been slowly taking over the Galactic Council for 70 years. They conquered weaker species, then forced them to vote with interests in the Council. Any species that resisted was destroyed or isolated. The Council's bureaucracy moved so slowly that by the time they investigated complaints, entire civilizations had already fallen. And the Death World quarantine policy, that had been an addition to the Council Charter just 40 years ago. They had learned that species from harsh planets made dangerous soldiers, so they made sure those species never left their home systems. "All pilots, this is Eagle One," said into her radio. "Remember your training, stay in formation, watch your wingman, and come home safe." She pushed the throttle forward, and the Strike Eagle shot out of the hangar into the black void of space. Below her, Earth was mobilizing for war. Sergeant watched the activity from the observation deck of the military station in orbit. His unit, the 1st Orbital Drop Infantry, was loading into the massive transport ships that would carry them to space. 2,000 soldiers, the best Earth had trained, equipped with powered armor that could survive the impact of dropping from orbit directly onto a planet's surface. "Nervous, Sergeant?" asked Private, one of the youngest members of the unit. "Terrified," admitted, "but that's good. Fear keeps you sharp. It's when you stop being afraid that you make mistakes." He watched as cargo containers full of ammunition and supplies were loaded into the ship's belly. "Remember what they taught us, the fight with honor. They follow rules of engagement. They give warnings before attacking. We don't have that luxury. We're the newcomers. We're outnumbered. So we fight dirty, we fight smart, and we fight to win." On the other side of the station, Technician was doing something that would have horrified the Galactic Council if they knew about it. She had taken apart one of the Council's communication probes, the ones they had left in Earth's solar system to monitor compliance. Now she was carefully removing its faster-than-light communicator and integrating it into Earth's weapon systems. "This is insane," her assistant muttered. "If we get caught reverse engineering their technology." "They told us to dismantle our own technology and stay isolated," interrupted, not looking up from her work. "They started this, we're just finishing it." She connected the final wire and the device hummed to life. "Perfect. Now our missiles can track faster-than-light targets. They won't expect that." In Geneva, Ambassador was having the hardest conversation of his life. The diplomat had arrived in secret, traveling through Council space using smuggler routes to avoid detection. His name was, and he looked even more frightened in person than he had in the transmission. "Your assembly voted to help us," said, his large eyes blinking rapidly. "I cannot express my gratitude. My people thought we would die alone, abandoned by the galaxy." "We haven't won yet," reminded him. "We're one planet that just learned how to reach the stars, that have conquered dozens of worlds. We need every advantage we can get." Reached into his bag and pulled out a data device. "This contains everything we know about military tactics, ship designs, and weak points. We have been studying them for years, preparing for the day they would attack. We just never had the strength to fight back ourselves." Took the device carefully. "Why us? Why trust a species you just met?" "Because," said quietly, "we researched your history. We saw your wars, your conflicts, your ability to survive terrible things. The Council looks at your history and sees violence. We looked and saw resilience. We saw a species that never gives up even when they should. We saw survivors who became protectors. That is what we need now, not more politicians talking in chambers. We need warriors." The data from changed everything. Earth's military planners studied the tactics and found something interesting. They fought like honorable warriors. They announced their attacks. They gave opponents time to surrender. They followed strict codes of conduct in battle. It was all very civilized and very predictable. Admiral, the newly appointed commander of Earth's combined fleet, looked at the data and smiled grimly. "They fight like people who have never had to fight for their survival. They fight like people who have always won." He turned to his staff officers. We're going to teach them what it means to fight an enemy that evolved fighting each other for 1,000,000 years. The plan was brutal in its simplicity. Earth's fleet, numbering 47 ships of various sizes, would not engage in traditional combat. Instead, they would use hit-and-run tactics, guerrilla warfare in space, and weapons that the galaxy considered barbaric: nuclear missiles, kinetic kill weapons, cyber attacks, biological agents targeted at physiology. "Sir," one of the younger officers said hesitantly, "the Council has rules about weapons of mass destruction. If we use these—" "The Council already ordered us to dismantle our civilization," Admiral interrupted. "They can't condemn us twice. Besides, rules only matter if both sides follow them. They are using the Council's rules as camouflage while they conquer the galaxy. We're going to show them what happens when they face an enemy that doesn't care about their rules." The message from the Galactic Council arrived exactly 30 days after their first contact. It was brief and formal. Earth had failed to comply with the quarantine order. The Council was authorizing the Empire to enforce compliance with military force. The Third Fleet, consisting of 200 warships, was en route to Earth. Estimated arrival time: 8 days. Captain read the message 3 times. 200 warships against Earth's 47. The math was not encouraging. But then again, math had never been humanity's strong point when it came to war. History was full of battles where the side that should have lost found a way to win anyway. "All ships, this is Admiral," the announcement came over every speaker on every Earth vessel. "They are coming. They expect us to surrender or die. They think we're primitives playing at war. They're wrong. We are what happens when evolution creates a species that refuses to quit. We are what happens when survivors become soldiers. In 8 days, they will learn why the galaxy feared Death World species. In 8 days, we show them that when we fight to win. No matter the cost, no matter the odds. Prepare for combat." Commander checked her fighter's weapons one more time. Sergeant inspected his drop armor and thought about the training jumps he had done, preparing for combat landings on hostile worlds. Technician uploaded the final version of her tracking software to the fleet's missile systems. Doctor, who had boarded a medical frigate, prepared the surgical bays for casualties she knew would come. Ambassador stood in his office looking at Earth through the window. Somewhere down there, families were saying goodbye to soldiers. Children were asking their parents why the stars were suddenly dangerous. People were scared. They had every right to be. But they had also voted to help strangers they had never met, knowing it might cost them everything. "We pleaded for mercy," said softly. He had come to stand beside, looking at the blue planet below. "My people sent a desperate message to strangers, begging for help. We expected silence. Instead, you responded with warriors." "We responded with humanity," corrected. "And humanity has always been at its best when protecting others." He paused. "Or at its most dangerous. Sometimes they're the same thing." 8 days later, the Third Fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. Their commander, a veteran of 30 campaigns, looked at the sensor readings showing Earth's pathetic fleet and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. This would be quick. This would be easy. This would teach the galaxy what happened to species that the Council. He was wrong on all 3 counts. Earth's fleet didn't engage in formation. They scattered like prey animals, which made the commander confused. Then the first missiles arrived, moving faster than anything they had encountered, guided by stolen Council technology. The missiles were tipped with nuclear warheads, weapons so primitive and brutal that the galaxy had banned them 2,000 years ago. The age of humanity's isolation was over. The age of Earth's warriors had begun. And the galaxy was about to learn a hard lesson about what happens when you corner a predator and ask it to watch innocent people die. The flagship Pride of Empire shuddered as the first nuclear missile struck its shields. Commander stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The primitive humans had just used a weapon that civilized species had abandoned ago. The radiation alone would contaminate the battlefield for years. It was barbaric. It was unthinkable. It was terrifyingly effective. "Shields at 60%, his tactical officer shouted. "More missiles incoming. They're using our own faster-than-light tracking systems against us." Pride evaporated, replaced by cold military calculation. "All ships, scatter formation. Target the human vessels and destroy them one by one. They cannot hope to—" He never finished the sentence. 3 more missiles struck the Pride of Empire in rapid succession. The shields collapsed. The 4th missile penetrated the hull and detonated inside the ship's engine core. Admiral watched from the bridge of Earth's flagship Indomitable as the command ship broke apart in a ball of fire and radiation. "Target the ships trying to regroup. Don't let them form a defensive line. Commander, your wing is clear to engage." "Copy that, Admiral. Eagle Squadron on me." Pushed her Strike Eagle to maximum acceleration, leading her fighters directly into the formation. The alien ships were larger, more powerful, and more advanced, but they were also slow to respond to tactics they had never encountered before. Squadron wove between the massive cruisers, firing missiles at point-blank range before the enemy gunners could track them. "This is insane," Private shouted over the radio from inside the dropship. The transport was shaking violently as it dodged weapons fire, trying to reach its target. "Welcome to war," Sergeant said calmly, though his heart was racing. "Remember the plan. We breach the carrier, sabotage the engines, and get out before it explodes. Simple." "That's suicide, Sergeant." "Only if we fail." Checked his rifle one more time. The dropship suddenly lurched, and he heard the pilot screaming into the radio. "We're hit, port engine is gone. I can't maintain course." "Then crash us into the target," ordered. "All troops brace for impact." The dropship slammed into the side of the carrier with enough force to crack the alien vessel's hull. Alarms blared as atmosphere rushed out into space. And his unit, sealed in their powered armor, kicked open the dropship's rear door and charged into the ship. The soldiers inside were not prepared for boarding actions. Their military doctrine didn't include the possibility of enemy forces crashing ships into their hulls intentionally. This unit moved through the corridors like they had trained, fast and brutal. They didn't try to hold positions. They didn't take prisoners. They had one mission: destroy the engines and escape. "Demolition team, plant the charges," ordered as they reached the engine room. They were trying to mount a defense, but human weapons fired faster, hit harder, and didn't give warnings before shooting. Within 3 minutes, the charges were set. "All teams, fall back to the breach point. We have 2 minutes before detonation." They ran through the corridors, fighting their way back to where they had entered. Half the unit made it back to the dropship. The other half stayed behind, holding off reinforcements to buy time. Was the last one aboard. As the dropship pulled away from the carrier, he watched through the porthole as the charges detonated. The carrier tore itself apart from the inside. "Sir," said quietly, "we left people behind." "I know," his voice was heavy. "They knew the risks. We all did. Now we make sure their sacrifice mattered." Back in space, the battle was turning into a nightmare for the Third Fleet. They had expected organized resistance, traditional ship-to-ship combat, and civilized warfare. Instead, they faced enemies who treated their own ships as disposable weapons, who used nuclear weapons without hesitation, and who seemed to have no concept of honorable surrender. Commander's fighter was damaged, one engine barely working, but she kept fighting. She saw a destroyer trying to escape the battle and gave chase. "Eagle 2, target that destroyer. We can't let any of them report back to their empire with our tactics." "Eagle 1, I'm out of missiles." "Then use your ship. Ram them if you have to. We can't let them escape." There was a pause on the radio. Then Eagle 2 spoke, his voice steady. "Understood. It's been an honor flying with you, Commander." The fighter accelerated to maximum speed and crashed into the destroyer's bridge. Both vessels exploded in a flash of light. felt tears on her face inside her helmet, but she kept flying. This was war. This was what humanity did when backed into a corner. They fought with everything they had, sacrificing everything to protect what mattered. On board the Indomitable, Special Operative was preparing for her mission. While the fleet engaged the ships, she and her Ghost Corps team had a different objective. They had identified an admiral's ship, separated from the main fleet during the chaos. Their orders were simple: capture the admiral alive and extract information. The Ghost Corps infiltration ship was invisible to sensors, using stealth technology that Earth had developed for submarine warfare and adapted for space. They docked with the admiral's ship without being detected, cutting through the hull with plasma torches and boarding in complete silence. The crew never saw them coming. S team moved through the ship like shadows, using non-lethal weapons to incapacitate the crew without raising alarms. They found the admiral in his command chamber, desperately trying to coordinate his fleeing fleet. Admiral said in the language which she had learned from the data files, "You're coming with us." The admiral turned, reaching for his sidearm, but was faster. She shot the weapon out of his hand and had him restrained in seconds. "Your fleet is dying. 90% casualties so far. Your choice is simple: come with us and live, or die with your ship." "You are savages," spat. "Nuclear weapons, suicide attacks, boarding actions. You have no honor." "We have survival," said coldly. "And right now that's worth more than honor. Move." They dragged the admiral back to their ship and escaped just as the main fleet finished destroying the last of the resistance. Of the 200 ships that had arrived to enforce the Council's will, only 60 managed to escape back to faster-than-light travel. The rest were debris floating in Earth's solar system. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, looking at the casualty reports. Earth had lost 22 ships. 3,000 soldiers were dead or missing. It was the bloodiest day in human history, and it was a victory. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions from the Galactic Council," the communications officer reported. "Multiple species are demanding explanations. Some are calling for our immediate destruction. Others are requesting emergency sessions." "Ignore them all," said. "We're not done yet. Prepare the fleet for faster-than-light travel. We're going to space." The news of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. The Third Fleet, a force that had conquered 6 star systems, had been destroyed by a species that had only achieved space travel months ago. The Galactic Council erupted into chaos. Some species called for immediate military action against Earth. Others quietly began reconsidering their alliances with the Empire. Ambassador received hundreds of communications, everything from threats to offers of alliance. He ignored most of them. There was only one transmission he cared about, the one from. "You won," the said, his voice filled with amazement and horror. "Nobody thought it was possible. A Death World species just defeated a Council military power. The galaxy is in shock." "We're not done," told him. "Our fleet is coming to the promise to attack you in 42 days. We'll be there in 20. Can your people hold out until then?" "We will try, but Ambassador, you must understand what you've started. The galaxy will never see humanity the same way again. You terrified them. They watched you fight without honor, without mercy, without hesitation. They watched you sacrifice your own people to destroy your enemies. They are calling you monsters." Looked at Earth through his office window, at the blue planet that had just sent its children to die in the void of space to protect strangers. "Let them call us monsters. We call ourselves protectors. They wanted us isolated because they feared what we could do. Now the whole galaxy will see what a Death World species can do when you threaten the innocent. Tell your people to hold on. Earth's warriors are coming." Admiral, locked in a cell aboard the Indomitable, knew everything had changed. Special Operative's interrogation had been thorough and terrifying. Humans didn't use torture, but they didn't need to. They simply told him exactly what they would do to colonies if he didn't cooperate. Then they showed him footage of what they had done to his fleet. He believed every threat. He had given them everything: fleet positions, military codes, strategic plans, supply routes, the location of every military installation in 3 sectors, and the biggest secret of all, 5 other council species were under complete control, their governments replaced by puppet rulers who voted however the empire demanded. "The council isn't a democracy," said, looking at the data had provided. "It's a hostage situation. They have been using bureaucracy as a weapon for decades." "Then we dismantle it," Admiral said. "They asked for help. We're going to give them more than that. We're going to liberate every species under control, starting now." Earth's fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving behind a solar system littered with the wreckage of 200 ships. The message was clear. Humanity had entered the galactic stage not as victims or supplicants, but as warriors. They didn't ask for permission. They didn't apologize for existing. They simply fought for what they believed was right, and they would burn down anyone who stood in their way. The galaxy had wanted Earth to stay isolated and quiet. Instead, they had created an enemy that knew no limits and accepted no surrender. The Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had threatened people who asked humanity for help. And humanity, forged in 1,000,000 years of survival on a death world, responded the only way they knew how, with warriors who would never stop fighting. Was a beautiful planet. From orbit, Colonel could see vast purple forests, crystal blue oceans, and cities that sparkled like jewels in the sunlight. He could also see the siege fleet surrounding the planet like a noose, and the fires burning in those jeweled cities where the invasion had already begun. "Colonel, we're detecting 800 ships in orbit and an estimated 50,000 ground troops on the surface," reported intelligence officer. Her voice was calm despite the numbers. "Earth's fleet is outnumbered 15 to 1. "Then we'll just have to fight 15 times harder," said. He turned to his battalion commanders on the video screen. "Remember, our objective isn't to win a fair fight. It's to break the siege and save as many as possible. Admiral will handle the fleet battle. We handle the ground war." Admiral's strategy was the same one that had worked against the Third Fleet: chaos. Earth's ships didn't try to match the formation. Instead, they scattered across the battlefield, forcing the enemy to split their forces. Commander, now promoted to squadron leader after her actions at Earth, led the fighter wings in a direct assault on the troop carriers. "All fighters target the ships marked in red on your displays," ordered. "Those are carrying ground reinforcements. Destroy them before they can land more troops." Her Strike Eagle screamed through space, weaving between massive battleships that fired at her with weapons that could vaporize a mountain. She didn't dodge all of them. Her ship took hits that damaged the armor and knocked out systems. But she kept flying, kept fighting, because that's what humans did. On the planet's surface, the situation was desperate. They had landed in the capital city, and their soldiers were systematically capturing government buildings and infrastructure. The military was fighting back, but they were trained for defensive warfare, not the brutal close-quarters combat they excelled at. Then the sky above the capital began to rain fire. Colonel's drop pods hit the atmosphere at speeds that would kill most species from the deceleration alone. Humans, with their denser bones and higher gravity tolerance, survived. The pods slammed into the streets of the capital like meteors, each one containing 5 soldiers in powered armor. Within seconds, 2,000 human soldiers were in the city, and they had no idea what hit them. Sergeant kicked open his pod's door and immediately came under fire. Soldiers were shooting at him from a building across the street. He didn't take cover. Instead, he charged directly at them, his armor absorbing the hits while he returned fire with his rifle. The weapon couldn't penetrate his armor. His weapon could penetrate theirs. 3 seconds later, the soldiers were dead and was moving to the next target. "This is Ghost One," came Special Operative's voice over the command channel. "My team is in position behind enemy lines. We've located their command center. It's in the old Parliament building." "Can you take it?" Colonel asked, directing his own unit through the city streets. Negative, too many guards, but I can paint it for him. Stand by. Eagle Squadron, do you copy? Commander checked her fighter's weapons display. She had 3 missiles left. Copy, Ghost One. Send me the coordinates. The data came through and saw the problem immediately. The Parliament building was in the middle of a residential district. There were civilians sheltering in the buildings around it, and would kill hundreds of innocents along with the commanders. She thought about her orders, about the mission, about winning at any cost. Then she thought about why they were here in the first place, to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. Ghost One, stand by. I'm going in for a precision strike. Commander, that's impossible. You'd have to fly through the city streets below the buildings with no room for error. I know what I have to do. All fighters continue engaging the orbital targets. This one's mine. Aimed her damaged strike eagle at the planet's surface and dove. Field medic Sora had set up a triage station in what used to be a hospital. Now it was a place where humans and worked side by side, trying to save lives while the battle raged outside. She had never imagined anything like this. Wounded soldiers from both species lay on tables while she moved between them, her hands covered in blood that came in different colors. Doctor, we have more incoming, a nurse called out. The hospital shook as explosions echoed nearby. Sora didn't stop working. Prep stations 3 and 4. Anyone who can walk needs to help carry supplies. She finished suturing a human soldier's wound and moved to the next table, where a civilian lay injured from collapsed building debris. They looked at her with large, terrified eyes. You're human, the civilian whispered. You came to save us. We're trying, Sora said honestly, examining the injuries. This is going to hurt, but I can fix it. Hold still. Outside, the battle for the city was turning into urban warfare unlike anything they had experienced. Human soldiers fought from building to building, using tactics developed in Earth's bloodiest conflicts. They didn't hold ground. They didn't form defensive lines. They attacked from a different angle, and never let them predict their movements. Colonel coordinated the chaos from a command post he had set up in a bombed-out shopping center. 3rd Battalion, fall back to Sector 7. 2nd Battalion, move in behind the forces at Sector 9. Don't engage directly. Hit them from the sides and retreat before they can respond. Intelligence officer was monitoring enemy communications, using the codes they had extracted from Admiral. Colonel, they are requesting reinforcements from orbit. They're admitting they can't control the city. Good. Let them know what it feels like to be overwhelmed. Pulled up a map of the city. They controlled the center, but humans had cut them off from their supply lines. It was only a matter of time before they ran out of ammunition and supplies. Commander flew her strike eagle through the city streets at speeds that would have been reckless even without damage to her ship. Buildings blurred past on either side. She had to pull up sharply to avoid bridges, dive to dodge elevated transit lines, and constantly adjust for the wind that bounced unpredictably between the structures. Her targeting computer couldn't get a lock. She would have to do this manually. The Parliament building appeared ahead of her, flags hanging from its walls. She could see soldiers on the roof, and they were starting to fire at her. She armed her last 3 missiles, aimed by instinct and experience, and fired. Then she pulled up hard, barely clearing the building's roof. All 3 missiles went through windows on different floors and detonated inside the structure. The building collapsed, taking the command center with it. Team confirmed seconds later that the enemy commanders were dead. But fighter had taken too much damage. The engines were failing. Eagle Squadron, this is Eagle One. I'm going down. Don't break formation to help me. Complete the mission. Commander, eject, her wingman shouted. Negative, I'm over a residential area. If I eject, this fighter crashes into civilian buildings. I'm going to try to reach the industrial sector. She fought with the controls, trying to guide the dying fighter away from the populated areas. She almost made it. The fighter crashed into an abandoned factory and felt the impact break 3 of her ribs even through the safety harness. She was pulling herself from the wreckage when civilians found her. They had watched the battle, seen her risk herself to avoid hitting their homes. Now they carried her to safety, protecting her from patrols until human soldiers could reach her position. The battle lasted 72 hours. Human forces and the military, fighting together, pushed the out of the capital and back to their landing zones. In orbit, Admiral's fleet destroyed or disabled enough ships that the remainder retreated to faster-than-light travel, abandoning their ground forces. When it was over, Colonel stood in the ruins of the Parliament building, surrounded by bodies from 3 different species. He had lost 400 soldiers. They had lost thousands. They had lost everything. Ambassador arrived on the planet 2 days after the battle ended, accompanied by the leader, Premier Loris. Together, they walked through the capital, seeing the destruction and the rebuilding already beginning. "You saved us," Loris said quietly. "We asked for help expecting nothing, and you came with an army." "We came with warriors," corrected. "But warriors who fight for more than just victory. They fight for people they've never met because it's the right thing to do." They stopped at the hospital where field medic Sara was still working. She looked exhausted, her uniform stained with blood from multiple species, but she was smiling as she helped a young child who had been injured in the fighting. "That's what humanity is," continued. "We can be brutal in war, yes. We can be savage and terrifying. But we're also the species that sends medics to save enemy wounded. We're the species that risks pilots to avoid civilian casualties. We're complicated, Premier, just like any species. The galaxy wants to see us as monsters or savages. We're neither. We're just people who refuse to watch others suffer when we can help." Intelligence officer approached with a data pad. "Ambassador, you need to see this. We've analyzed the communications during the battle. They were coordinating with 5 other council species. The information Admiral gave us was accurate. The Empire controls nearly half the council through puppet governments." "Then our work isn't done," said. He looked at Premier Loris. "Your people are free now, but there are others still under control, others who can't defend themselves. We're planning to liberate them all." "You would fight the entire Empire?" Loris asked in disbelief. "Yes. That's insane. That's impossible. That's what humans do," finished. "We don't know when to quit. It's our greatest weakness and our greatest strength." He paused. "The question is, will they stand with us?" Premier Loris looked at the city, at his people rebuilding alongside human soldiers, at the hospital where species that had been strangers a month ago now saved each other's lives. "We pleaded for mercy when we thought we would die alone. You responded with warriors who gave us hope. Yes, Ambassador, that will stand with Earth. We will fight beside you to free the others." That night, as temporary shelters were being built and the wounded were being cared for, Colonel found Commander in the medical bay. She was bandaged but alive, arguing with doctors about when she could return to flight duty. "You should rest," Commander said. "I will when this is over. How many more systems do we need to liberate?" 5, according to the intelligence. 5 species under control. Nodded, wincing at the pain from her ribs. "Then we'd better get started. The galaxy is watching. Let's show them what Earth's warriors can do when we fight for freedom instead of conquest." 6 months after the liberation of Earth's fleet had grown from 47 ships to 230. They had joined the fight, contributing their own vessels and technology. 3 other species had been freed from control, and their gratitude had taken the form of ships, soldiers, and resources. The galaxy was watching humanity's campaign with a mixture of horror and fascination. Captain, promoted to Admiral after his role in the early conflicts, stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship, defiant. He was reading intelligence reports from across the galaxy. The Galactic Council was in complete chaos. Some species wanted to support humanity's liberation campaign. Others were terrified of what would happen if a Death World species became too powerful. The debates had been going on for months while Earth simply kept fighting. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Minu, who had stayed with through every promotion, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. It's Ambassador." The ambassador's face appeared on the screen and he looked worried. "Admiral, the Empire has launched a planet-killer weapon. It's headed for Earth. Estimated arrival in 48 hours." The bridge fell silent. A planet-killer was exactly what it sounded like, a weapon capable of destroying an entire world. The galaxy had banned them after the last Great War, 5,000 years ago. The fact that the still had one meant they were desperate enough to use it. "How did they build it without the Council knowing?" asked. "They didn't build it. They found it, an ancient weapon left over from before the Council existed. Our intelligence suggests it's been hidden in their territory for centuries, kept as a final deterrent. Earth's campaign has pushed them to use it." Admiral's face appeared on another screen. He was commanding the fleet currently liberating the fourth controlled system. "Admiral, if we leave now, we can intercept that weapon before it reaches Earth. But it means abandoning this operation. Thousands of people will remain under occupation." Looked at his crew. He thought about Earth, about the billions of people who had supported this campaign even knowing it might bring retaliation. He thought about the humans and aliens fighting together across 5 star systems to free the oppressed. Then he thought about what his species had always done when faced with impossible choices. They found a third option. "We don't abandon the operation," said, "and we don't let Earth die. We do both. Admiral, continue your mission. I'm taking a strike force to intercept the planet killer. We'll stop it." "With how many ships?" asked. "However many volunteer to follow me on a suicide mission," stood from his command chair. "All hands, this is Admiral. I'm about to ask for volunteers for a mission that will probably kill us all. They have launched a weapon at Earth. To stop it, we need to get close enough to destroy it, which means getting through whatever defenses they've put around it. I'm taking the Defiant to intercept. Anyone who wants to join me, form up on my position. Anyone who wants to stay with the Liberation Fleet, I don't blame you. You have 60 seconds to decide." 53 ships broke formation and moved to join the Defiant. Among them was Commander in her new fighter, fully healed from her injuries at. Sergeant's dropship joined the formation. Special Operative's stealth vessel appeared on the sensors. Doctor, who had been serving as Chief Medical Officer on a hospital ship, transferred to the Defiant to be there for the final battle. The strike force jumped to faster-than-light travel, racing toward the coordinates where the planet killer would pass. They arrived to find it was worse than expected. The weapon was a massive sphere, 50 kilometers in diameter, protected by 100 warships. And leading that fleet was a ship they recognized from the intelligence files, the Emperor's personal flagship. "The Emperor himself is commanding the escort," Lieutenant Minu said. "This is more than a military operation. It's personal for him." Smiled grimly. "Good, then let's make it memorable. All ships prepare for combat. This is our stand. This is where we show the galaxy who we are." The battle began like all human battles, with chaos. Earth's ships scattered using their now famous guerrilla tactics, but this time they were ready. They had studied human warfare for 6 months. They knew the tricks, the tactics, the willingness to sacrifice. The Emperor had set a trap. As Earth's fleet engaged the escorts, the planet killer activated an emergency faster-than-light jump. It was going to bypass the battle entirely and head straight for Earth. The only ship close enough to follow was the Defiant, and didn't hesitate. "Minu, plot a jump to follow that weapon. Engineering, I need everything you can give me. We're going to catch that thing and stop it, even if we have to ram it with this ship." The Defiant jumped, emerging from faster-than-light travel directly in the path of the planet killer. The weapon was approaching Earth's solar system. Could see his on the long-range sensors, blue and beautiful and completely unaware of the death heading toward it. "All weapons fire on that sphere. Target the power core." The Defiant unleashed everything it had, but the planet killer's shields were designed to withstand the death of worlds. Human weapons barely scratched it. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the sphere," Minu reported. "It's the Emperor." The screen showed an alien in ornate armor, his face twisted with rage. "Human Admiral, you have destroyed my fleets, liberated my territories, and made the Empire a laughingstock. Now watch as I erase your species from existence. This weapon cannot be stopped. Accept your death with whatever honor your kind possesses." "Here's the thing about humans," said calmly. "We don't accept death, we fight it, we rage against it. We do whatever it takes to survive, even when survival should be impossible. You wanted to show us our place in the galaxy. We're about to show you ours." He turned to his crew. "Evacuate the ship, all hands to escape pods, that's an order." "Sir, what are you?" "That's an order, move." Doctor grabbed his arm. "No, there has to be another way." "There isn't, but there's a way to make sure this matters." He smiled at her, the same smile he had given her on that first mission when they discovered they weren't alone in the universe. "Tell Earth's story. Tell them we fought to the end. Tell them we never stopped protecting people who needed us." The crew evacuated, escape pods launching from the Defiantes remained alone on the bridge. He set the ship on a collision course with the planet killer, maximum speed, and armed every weapon and every reactor to overload on impact. Commander saw what he was doing and screamed into her radio. "Admiral, get out of there. We can find another way." "This is the way, Commander. You're in charge now. Finish the liberation campaign. Show the galaxy that Earth doesn't stop fighting just because I'm gone. That's an order from your Admiral." The Defiant slammed into the planet killer at relativistic speeds, and the combined explosion of Earth's most advanced warship and the ancient weapon lit up space like a new sun. The detonation was so powerful that it destroyed 3 of the escort ships that had jumped in to support the weapon. When the light faded, both the Defiant and the planet killer were gone. Earth was saved. The news reached Admiral's fleet within hours. The liberation operation paused as human and alien soldiers alike mourned the loss of the Admiral who had started it all. But they didn't stop. That wasn't what would have wanted. They continued fighting, and within 2 months, all 5 controlled systems were free. The Empire, its military shattered and its emperor disgraced by the loss of the planet killer, sued for peace. Ambassador, now leading Earth's diplomatic efforts, presented the terms to the Galactic Council. The terms were simple. They would surrender all occupied territories, dismantle their military to defensive forces only, and pay reparations to the species they had oppressed. Any resistance would result in Earth's fleet arriving at the itself. The Council, having watched humanity's campaign for 6 months, didn't doubt the threat. They accepted Earth's terms. Then came the harder negotiation. Earth's place in the galaxy. The Council offered humanity a seat, equal standing with all other species, and an apology for the quarantine order. Some Council members even suggested that Earth should lead the Council's peacekeeping forces, given their demonstrated effectiveness. Stood before the Council, thinking about all that had happened since Captain first made contact. "Earth will accept a Council seat, but we won't be your military. We'll fight when we must to protect those who can't protect themselves. But we're not conquerors. We're not your weapon. We're a species that values freedom, and we expect every species in this council to have that same freedom." The council agreed. New laws were written. The Death World quarantine policy was abolished. Species could no longer vote to isolate others out of fear. The bureaucracy that had allowed the Empire to operate with impunity was reformed. And Earth, the newcomer species that had arrived only months ago, became the Council's conscience and its protector. 10 years later, Field Medic Sara stood in front of a monument on. The statue showed 3 humans, Captain looking toward the stars, Sergeant standing in armor with his rifle, and Sara herself kneeling beside a wounded soldier. The inscription read, "They pleaded for mercy. Earth responded with warriors, and in those warriors we found our salvation. Around her, human and children played together, growing up in a galaxy where multiple species worked side by side. The Earth Defense Force, as it was now called, had bases on 7 worlds, staffed by humans and aliens who had joined together. Commander, now a general, oversaw the training programs where pilots from a dozen species learned tactics that had once been considered barbaric but were now standard. Doctor, leading the research institute, had just published her comprehensive study of humanity's impact on galactic civilization. She wrote, "We came to the stars seeking knowledge and found ourselves thrust into war. We fought not because we loved violence, but because we could not stand by and watch innocent people suffer. In our brutality, we showed compassion. In our warfare, we brought peace. We taught the galaxy that true strength isn't about military power. It's about the willingness to sacrifice everything for those who cannot protect themselves." In a training facility on Earth, young recruits from multiple species ran through combat drills together. An instructor demonstrated tactics while a human sergeant corrected their formations. An engineer taught them how to repair battle damage while a human technician showed them creative solutions to impossible problems. One young recruit asked her human partner, "Is it true what they say, that humans evolved on a death world, and that's why you fight the way you do?" The human recruit thought about it. "I guess that's part of it. Earth taught us to survive against all odds, but I think the real reason is simpler. We fight because someone has to. We fight because we've seen what happens when good people do nothing. And we fight because we believe everyone deserves to be free, even if we have to die to protect that freedom." The recruit nodded slowly. "My grandmother was in the capital when your forces arrived. She says she was hiding in a basement, certain she would die, when she heard the sound of drop pods landing. She says she knew everything would be okay when she heard humans fighting above her, giving their lives to protect people they had never met." "That's what we do," the human said simply. "That's what makes us human." At the Galactic Council headquarters, now relocated to a neutral station built by a coalition of species, Ambassador prepared for another session. The council had changed dramatically. Species that had once hidden behind bureaucracy now actively worked to prevent conflicts. The fear of another humanity, another death world species that would forcibly liberate the oppressed, had made them better. A new alien species was being welcomed into the council today. They were nervous, unsure of their place among civilizations that had existed for thousands of years. Remembered that feeling. He remembered when Earth was the newcomer, threatened and afraid. He approached their delegation. "Welcome to the council. I'm Ambassador from Earth." The alien leader's eyes widened. "Earth, the humans, we have heard stories. They say you defeated the Empire in months. They say you fight without honor or mercy. They say." "They say a lot of things," interrupted gently. "Most of them are true. We fight hard. We fight to win. We use tactics that other species consider brutal, but we also fight for the right reasons. We protect the weak. We stand against tyranny, and we never ever abandon those who ask for our help." "The galaxy fears you," the alien said quietly. "I know they also respect us. Fear and respect, we've earned both, but we'd rather have friendship." He smiled. "Give us a chance. Get to know us. You'll find we're not the monsters some species make us out to be. We're just people trying to do the right thing in a complicated galaxy." That night, as stars shone through the station's windows, looked at Earth on the death world that had produced a species the galaxy had tried to quarantine, was now a symbol of hope. Other death world species were being contacted, invited to join the galactic community instead of being isolated. The council was stronger, more just, and more compassionate because of humanity's presence. But the cost had been high. Monuments across 12 worlds honored the humans who had died in the liberation campaigns. Captain's sacrifice was taught in schools across the galaxy. The lesson was simple. Sometimes peace requires warriors. Sometimes protecting the innocent means being willing to do terrible things. Sometimes the difference between a monster and a hero is simply who you fight for. Ambassador thought about this desperate message that had started everything. They had pleaded for mercy, expecting silence. Instead, Earth had responded with warriors who fought across the stars, who sacrificed themselves without hesitation, who showed the galaxy that Death World species weren't dangerous because they were primitive. They were dangerous because they were survivors who refused to let others suffer. And in the end, that made all the difference.